Hi, welcome to this edition of the Cutting Room Floor. My name is Eric here at Sunnyside Christian Church, and I want to start today's edition by just thanking all of you who have sat through some of these cutting room floors. Ralph and I have been putting these together now for quite a few weeks, and I think we're getting better every week. I'm very uncomfortable in front of the camera, I want you to know that, so I'm working on that and trying to get better. And Ralph is getting better with the technical side of it and the filming part of it as well. So with that said, again, thank you, appreciate it. What I want to talk about today is the sermon from last week was I Will Reject Churchianity. And in that sermon, I made mention of the fact that one of the enemies that we have when it comes to creating a church that really isn't biblical or authentic is the whole idea of being preference driven. And that we kind of come to church expecting all of our preferences to be met. Now, with that said, we've kind of created this monster ourselves. For instance, here we are in our little coffee bar. We call it the Common Grounds. Many churches have coffee shops in them. Probably more have some kind of coffee than don't. And I remember like 30 some years ago when I first was in ministry, if we would have had a coffee bar in the church, it would have been like a terrible thing. We would be branded as liberal and not focusing on the word. I'd imagine we'd be called all kind of names. And now, like I said, it's kind of commonplace. And me, for one, I enjoy a good cup of Joe, so I'm glad those days are over. We can have good coffee. We can have some stuff to eat. Matter of fact, here in the lobby of Sunnyside, any Sunday morning, you'll see a number of people sitting and chatting, having a donut or a bagel together and enjoying some coffee. And that's good, fellowship-wise. That's a whole nother subject. But I often think, what if we took that away? What if we didn't have coffee anymore? How many people would really be upset, and how many people would choose a church literally because of the size or the type of coffee shop that they have? I imagine there's got to be somebody out there. It's not a necessity. Sure is nice, but we don't have to have it. Now, that's just one example. There can be a number of things in any church, ours included, that are preferences. We don't want to be a church that's driven by our preferences. We want to be a church that's driven by the gospel. I often think of this and think of ministry today and all of the things that we do to try to reach people. We call them felt needs, to make sure we're meeting those needs so they're not an obstacle to the gospel, so they're not a hindrance to the gospel, and that we maybe even just get a chance to share the gospel. Jesus said these words, and this is one of the verses that I've recently quoted in sermons, is John chapter 12, verse 32. It says, "And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." Now that passage of Scripture goes on to talk about the fact that the reason Jesus said that in the first place was to let people begin to know how he was going to die. He was going to be lifted up on a cross. And that if he just had the opportunity through us to demonstrate how he died for us, sacrificed himself for us on a cross, then that would be the drawing card. It's not coffee, it's not donuts, it's not the type of music that we have, it's not the type of facility that we have, it's not parking lot size or quality. It's Jesus Christ himself. And so when we talk about all those other things that surround church, we're talking about eliminating obstacles or barriers so that we can preach Jesus, him lifted up on a cross on our behalf. And that's all really a cup of coffee is. And you can do that here in the lobby of Sunnyside. Share a cup of coffee with a friend that you've invited to church. Make them feel comfortable, make them feel accepted and welcomed. That's all our music does. It helps people recognize that, hey, their music style is something that I like. And maybe they'll listen to the lyrics of the song. That's the prayer. That's the hope. Our facility, everything we do, preference-wise, is to knock down barriers, to not be distractions. That's not what drives our faith. And so if you're listening to this cutting room floor, I simply want to remind you, don't let your faith be preference-driven. Let it be gospel-driven. And sit down sometime with a cup of coffee and share that with somebody. Cheers.